Welcome to ZKast, everyone. I'm ZKast from ZK Research, and I'm here in the Expo Hall at Zoomtopia 2023. I'm with fellow analyst and one of my favorite people, Shelly Kramer. How you doing, Shelly?
I'm great, thanks.
Did you enjoy the show?
I did enjoy the show. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so the show just ended, and we're going to break it down and talk a little bit about our thoughts from it. So Zoom made a lot of announcements here. Probably the most notable one was the entry into the document space with Zoom Docs. Although I do think from a naming perspective, it's really more of a canvas than a doc, but they chose to call it Zoom Docs. What did you think of the announcement?
You've been talking to Dave Michaels.
Yeah.
Because he's already decided to rename it Canvas, I believe. You know, I think it's interesting. It's an interesting announcement, interesting functionality. It's not really documents the way we think about documents.
In fact,
today.
the first thing they said on the pre-brief was it's the end of the 8.5 by 11, which is a document. So
right,
yeah,
right. So I think it is an interesting move. I think it's poorly named. I think that, but we know Zoom has a propensity to change names all the time. So that's okay. But I think it is interesting. I think it'll be interesting to kind of play with a little bit.
Yeah, I think, and for those that didn't see the announcement, it's really a canvas or a workspace closer to Notion.
To collaborate.
Where it's not if you think about the historical use of documents, and they made this point on the pre-brief, which was an appropriate one, that it's meant to replicate a piece of paper that you print. And we don't really work that way anymore. Yeah. So this is something that's more of a live workspace where you can include wikis and charts and boxes and things and really manage an entire project through it, right? So I think from that aspect, they're clearly going after the larger collaboration play as opposed to just communications, and this is a part of it.
Well, Zoom has long made it clear that the company's goal is to be a platform company, not a video company, even though I think you mentioned this the other day, their company name is still Zoom Video.
Yeah, it's still,
right?
Their legal name is Zoom Video Communications.
Right.
So,
and I think they're still primarily known for that.
Yeah.
And the good thing is that I think because of their success in the video comms arena, they are a household name. Right?
So can this be a successful product?
I think it can. It's too early for me to say without being able to use it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, like sometimes my problem with platforms that are designed to be collaboration platforms is that I like to be able to see who's contributing what and what's being changed, and it's not a control thing. It's if I write something and then you take it out and I don't see that, or you know what I'm saying? I think so. Sometimes for me, collaborative documents make the process of collaborating almost more difficult than not. Sometimes, and maybe that's just how my brain is wired. I don't know. But I think it's too early to tell without actually being in there and seeing how it works.
I think, now that they've entered this and then email and calendar before, I think for them, success there really depends on the sum of the parts, being greater than the whole, right?
Right.
And that comes in the form of AI and search. And so I'll give you an example, right? Like last year, or earlier this year, they launched email and calendar. And I thought, sure, I'll turn it on and try it, what the heck. And then I loaded it up and it's just Gmail imported into it.
Right.
And then I thought, it's okay, but I don't really need email and Zoom where I can just sort of toggle.
I'm already in Gmail all day.
But then now that they've announced search though, that's where the value comes from because, like in prepping for the event, the AR person sent us a know before you go, and then I couldn't remember, did that come in chat or did that come in email?
Right.
And so I had to search both. If you have universal search, now it searches that one set of data.
Which I mean, we've talked about the universal search capability.
Yeah.
To me, that's incredibly exciting.
Yeah.
Because I spend a lot of time, and again, in our conversations, it's like, was that in WebEx? Was that here? Was that in Zoom?
Yeah.
Was that in chat? Was that I chase around trying to figure out where I had these conversations, where I shared this information. So the universal search thing is really exciting.
And now if you can apply that to docs or canvases or whatever you want to call it, and whiteboards and things like that, then that becomes pretty interesting. And so even from an AI perspective, right, they talked a lot about their AI product.
Right.
And again, your AI is only as good as the data that feeds it.
Right.
Right. And so if they can create a unified data set that understands all of Shelly's behaviors,
right,
now they can make better recommendations. Right. So AI Companion, I think has some inherent advantages because Zoom does have that one consolidated platform. And so we'll see how they do with it, I suppose.
Well, and even in speaking about our pre-brief information, I don't know if you noticed this, but in the pre-brief follow-up email that we got, the AI generated the meeting notes.
Right, yeah.
Right, so, that was really very helpful and, information there. The other thing that I am really excited about, I love Zoom's federated approach to AI.
Yes.
And I feel like this is a difference maker. And I think that, not relying on just one relationship, I don't know what's going on there. I don't know.
Well, that's okay. Yeah.
But not relying on just one AI partner, I think, is key. And being able to make those interchangeable as they see how that works. But the other thing that I think is really key is Zoom's pricing model or lack thereof. And just making it available to paid users is, to me, that's kind of the crack cocaine that gets you hooked, right? And allows you to really, we've experienced this everywhere on our social platforms, on whatever, feeding us things that we think, oh, I can't live without
So
this.
it depends on who you want to have the AI.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have products like Revenue Accelerator and things that are geared towards sales, I don't think people have a problem paying $30, $50 a month for AI if you get even like a 10% uplift in sales, right? Then it's a no-brainer. But if you believe AI is something everybody should have and you're trying to democratize it, then I think you do have to make it free, because there are some areas where, IT support, things like that, where you may not understand the value until they use it.
Right.
And you wouldn't use it if you have to pay extra for it. And so it's an interesting approach they've taken, for sure.
Well, I think too, though, thinking beyond that, is that we are experiencing a monumental change in society as it relates to AI, right? This is really fun.
Yeah.
Look at this mood lighting. And we have generations.
It was dramatic
of people,
lighting when you said society.
Yeah. We have generations of people who need to learn how to use AI. And they need to understand the benefit that AI can provide. And to some people that's exciting, and to some people that's scary. So when you make it something that's available across the board, that you're not saying, when you have to pay $30 per user per seat, which, Eric's done a great job of, knocking Microsoft and knocking Google, but the reality of it is, you think about those $30 seats.
Yes.
And just, Shelly needs one, but does Zayas really need one, or whatever? And so you're really limiting the adoption and the learning that can happen as a result. So I feel like we're at this time where we have a workforce that needs to be reskilled, upskilled, and this is a perfect opportunity to get comfortable.
Although there is some AI where you shouldn't need, like in the contact center, if that works right, there's really no learning curve.
Oh, I agree.
Right? Yeah.
I agree. But I think there are going to be other opportunities to learn that Zoom users will be exposed to as a result that will be beneficial to them and to the company. And I think that's something that wasn't just mentioned here, but I think that's a key thing here.
Yeah, so now that they have contact center, phone, they've got a pretty broad collaboration suite, right? It looks like they're, from a platform perspective, they may add some other things. It's gotten pretty broad though.
Right.
And how do you, one of the struggles I see is adoption, right? And how do you think about that,
Adoption is always a challenge of any...
Because there's so much in there now, right?
Yeah. I think that, and we just talked about this before we did this recording, and I mentioned digital adoption. This is going to be the funniest video ever.
Yes.
Right? But I mentioned, I'm a big fan of WalkMe, an Israeli-based company who has a product that's a digital adoption platform. And basically this product slides into your tech stack, and what it does is it looks at, okay, you've got Marketo, you've got Zoom, you've got this, you've got that, and it shows you where adoption is happening throughout the organization, and it shows you where people are getting hung up, and Shelly is only using 10% of the capabilities that Zoom provides. So what that tells us is that we need more, we need to train her. We need to.
Yeah.
So I feel like there needs to be, maybe something like a digital adoption platform as part
built
of
into
the Zoom
it. Right.
ecosystem, built into it. Because that kind of technology helps you get the best ROI out of what it is you're spending on any technology.
Yeah, well, clearly that's something they need to work on. And when I was talking to their CIO, Gary Sorrentino, he said one of the things he's been thinking about are how do you teach people to use it? You have to do that through use cases. That's going to vary by vertical. And so the company now has got to work on those use cases and sort of those, I guess Graham said this on stage yesterday too, the hero use cases, right?
Yeah.
The things that are going to make it really easy, almost a no-brainer to adopt. But I don't know if the company's figured that out yet.
Well, I don't think they figured it out yet, and I will say, and I know that we talked about this a little bit, I was in that executive session as well, and I thought it was really interesting that they talked about, they felt like it was important to identify 3 pillar use cases, and that should, in my world, that would be part of your go-to-market strategy.
Yeah.
And they haven't developed those yet, so I think they need to speed that process up.
And by the way, I know you can't see what's going on on the other side of the camera, but I think we're the only station that hasn't been fully broken down yet. So
we are.
Yeah.
There's a lot of activity here. There's a lot of forklifts. There's a lot of backup devices, and this may be the most fun video that we've ever done, right?
Yeah, probably.
But you know what analysts do? We just
roll with it.
We make our spot wherever we can, and we roll with it.
I think the other thing I'd like to see them focus on more is the company makes a big deal about being a platform company and having a big ecosystem. They talk about 2,500 application partners. And first of all, I don't think that's a big number, right? If you look at the size of like a Salesforce ecosystem or a Microsoft's, they're in the hundreds of thousands, right? So I've told Zoom when you get to 10,000, 20,000, then I'll get excited. But they have been doing a good job. I think like last year it was only like 1,000, so they've more than doubled that. But the one concern I've got is I don't see them here in the expo hall, right? And so if they are building this big application partner program, why aren't they here? And the expo hall is largely a lot of hardware companies.
Hardware vendors, yeah. And those are important too.
Yeah.
I mean, those are important too, but absolutely we need to see.
Yeah, in fact, if you're in Zoom, you'll see down the side all the different apps.
Yeah.
I'd love to see maybe Zoom do a separate event that focuses strictly on apps, or even within this expo hall have an app section, because I do think those are the things that are going to make Zoom more valuable to users. It isn't, Zoom can only drive so much value, but once you get into vertical use cases and the integration of those apps, make it more usable for a broader set of people.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I think really another, announcement was around workforce management and the Vivo acquisition, and
that's kind of flown under the radar here, I think.
I mean, that is a big deal,
yeah.
And there's some great functionality that's available as a result of that, and I think that Zoom Contact Center is making some inroads, so I think that's significant.
Yeah. All right. So I think we need to wrap up before we get kicked out of here, or if we don't, we're going to get wrapped up and thrown in a box.
We are.
So overall, what do you? Positive show for you?
I think it's been a good event.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. I mean, always looking forward for I mean, there are good things and there are things we want to see more of, and that's why we're here, right?
And while we were a little nitpicky on platform and use cases,
and
one
docs,
of the things, and docs. One of the things I like, docs naming. One of the things I like about Zoom, though, is they're the one communications vendor that hasn't really kowtowed to Microsoft and just admits they're going to be there and will coexist. They're taking them on. And Eric was very vocal about the unfair practices Microsoft uses, forcing the customers to adopt with bundles and things like that. I've even heard some cases where customers have told me that Microsoft sales has said, if you put Zoom in, we're going to raise your prices and things. And so Zoom's the one company that's willing to put up your dukes, right?
Yeah, and I think too, I'll close by saying that, I love that Zoom is all about simplicity. Ease of use, and that's
why users love Zoom.
I can't tell you how many people, and I say this too, my 85-year-old mother-in-law learned to use Zoom during the pandemic, right? And she still watches her church service every Sunday on Zoom.
Yeah.
And so when something is simple, when it just works, that's exactly what you're looking for. And so you don't get that in every other platform. So I think Zoom has really done a good job.
In fact, there's very few corporate business platforms products that users love, right? And in fact, I can't really think of any others, right? Other companies have tried to bridge that consumer enterprise divide and hadn't had a lot of success doing it. So kudos to Zoom. I think if they keep focusing on what's right for the user, they'll be successful. So.
I agree.
All right, Shelly Kramer, thanks for joining me. Always a pleasure to spend some time with you. On behalf of Shelly, I'm Zias Karavelis, and thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you next time on another ZKast.